Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Rite, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. Today is special because the person that I choose to do life with, my husband, Wes Van Rite. I think it's fun that we have both found ourselves positioned to be working with ultra high net worth families. And I realized that he actually does something really cool. And I thought it would be something that you guys would enjoy hearing about. It is definitely one of those services that, like ours, if you don't know it exists, you don't even know to ask for it. And so I wanted to bring him on today and talk a little bit about how he works with families. So with that, welcome, babe. I like to let folks introduce themselves. It's way better than me reading a bio and everybody really getting bored.
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying I'm really happy to be on the podcast with you. And yeah, I think it's really fun that we get to share stories back and forth and experiences with our clients and how we help our clients and what we do for them and make their lives easier and better. I've been in the building science business, building science industry, I would say, for over 20 years. Started out the building automation, doing large commercial projects, lots of schools, lots of high rises, things like that. And then transitioned into more of a consulting role. I spent a few years studying with the Energy Systems Lab at Texas A&M, and that really got me on the path to go where I'm at today, which is a professional engineer. I've been a professional engineer for over 10 years and consulting and commissioning agent. So that was one of the things that I did at the research laboratory at Texas A&M was learn commissioning and learn building science. And originally was hired by a large engineering firm to do commissioning work as a commissioning agent. And that was when commissioning was just really starting to take off in the commercial construction industry. And then later became a project manager, design mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems design, and started my own firm in 2018. So I've had this business going now for, it's hard to believe that, 8 years. And really focus on high-end residential projects primarily. I do some commercial and mixed use, but we do both mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering design, and we also do commissioning, which I think is primarily what we're going to talk about today.
Indeed. I think it's not the MEP side, which you are an MEP engineer. That's not super exciting. But I think that, look, y'all, we're a super nerdy household. I mean, just tell you from the get-go, I'm on the finance side, he's on the engineering side. Sometimes we debate things on spreadsheets. It's a ton of fun. Ask us how it works. It's great. Today, I really do want to focus in on this commissioning side because it's not something, it's relatively new. It's not a new concept coming out of the commercial side, but it is relatively new on the residential side. And there are reasons why a construction project really can and should use commissioning agents. And I think some states are even requiring it on some level now, but nobody really knows what it is. And so that is what I want to focus on today. It seems like the bigger our families' houses get, they're buying estates, they're renovating, and we're into 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 square foot estates. These are small commercial buildings for the most part, but a lot of folks are still using commercial systems, but they're using them in a residential style or residential manner. Why is it important? What is the difference? Why are we bringing this role that historically has not been residential into the residential area?
Yeah, that's a good question. So commissioning at its core is a quality process. And you're right, it has become standard and required by code and by law in a lot of jurisdictions on commercial projects that are above a certain size. And usually that size is around 10,000 square feet. And that's all based on, once you get that big, primarily your air conditioning systems, your HVAC systems, they get pretty complex. And so it was originally mandated and made part of code to have a commissioning agent in your commercial project, involved in your commercial project, because of energy efficiency. When you have issues with your air conditioning system, that almost always leads to reduced performance and a higher energy consumption. So that was why it was brought in. What we've also found is that it's done correctly. This process, when you follow through the whole process, from pre-design into design and then construction and then post-occupancy, it reduces callbacks. It reduces the number of issues that linger after the project is completed. It makes everything work better because you have somebody that's their job, is to make sure that the systems are operating the way that they were designed. And you essentially wind up with a higher quality, higher performance in product with your construction project. And we're finding a place for it in residential. And it's a unique thing. We're not seeing it done a whole lot. Like you said, our high-end homes are becoming more complex. When we start talking about 10,000, 15,000 square feet, just like that situation in the commercial side, we're starting to see more complex systems, and we're starting to see systems that were originally, commercial in nature, intended for a commercial use, being applied in a residential situation. And so we're starting to see the same issues happening that we were seeing on the commercial side as well. And you still get the same benefits. You get the better performance, you get the better quality, you get the fewer callbacks and all that kind of thing. The way that I guess I've transitioned more from commercial focus to residential focus with this service is I was being asked by architects and engineers and owners to come and look at projects that they had completed years ago, and they weren't functioning correctly. And when I say completed, they had completed their work 2, 3 years ago, and then the project was built, and then they started getting callbacks and saying, "Hey, our air conditioning system isn't working the way it should be.
Right.
We think you designed it wrong." And the engineer is telling me, "I know we didn't design it wrong. Can you go see what they actually installed?" And they had lost touch with that project during the construction phase. And so I go and find out, no, they didn't actually do it the way it was designed. I can see why it's not performing the way it should be, because, I can see what the issues are. So fortunately, unfortunately, like my first applications of this, when these architects started calling me and saying, "Hey, can you come take a look at this for us?" I was like, you know what? Let's just use the commissioning process on this. Let's go back here and dissect the system. It's kind of like forensic engineering. You figure out what's going on, and then you start resolving the issues. It's one thing to find the issue. It's another thing to then facilitate the right people and get that issue resolved.
Right.
Facilitate the conversations, get the right people in the room, talk to your owner, understand their expectations, talk to your architect, all the people that are involved, get that into a solution. Sometimes it's just a matter of training your owner on how to use the system. And if you don't do it like this, here's what you can expect to happen. So setting expectations, sometimes it's modifying the systems a little bit to make them perform a little better. But preferably, ideally, we're not in that situation. That's kind of a worst case scenario, is that we're coming in after the fact.
Right.
When we already have problems. The ideal thing is that we're solving problems along the way, so that when we finish the project and we hand the keys to the owner, we have confidence that that system is operating the way it was designed. That system is operating at a very high level in terms of performance. And then we know that we're not going to be getting called back after you've moved into your brand new home. You're having contractors come through every day trying to fix stuff that's not working correctly. We should have fixed those things. We should have found those problems during the construction process and even during the design process, so that they're not problems later on down the road. It's a very proactive way to approach what I call the functional systems
Right.
of the building.
I think one of the things that we talk about a lot, because we both encountered it, is, and again, going back to the difference between the commercial and the residential side, on the commercial projects, the architects, the engineers, everybody who is on that front end design team stays with the project literally until it is closed out. They're in those weekly, monthly meetings. They're actively being a part of all of that. And the difference being on the residential side, and you mentioned this, that an architect gets a call 3 years later saying, "Hey, you didn't design it right," or the engineer gets a call saying, "Hey, you didn't design it right." There literally can be 3 to 5 years easily on these bigger projects between the time when the architects and engineers did the design and when the family is moving in. And yes, there's a little bit of communication. Can you clarify this? Or we need to make a change here, yes or no, those kinds of things. But on the residential side, that original design team is not usually involved, certainly not to the same degree, and yet you're using commercial systems in a residential application, and they don't tend to always play nicely together.
That's right. That's 100% right. Yeah. And yeah, I think that is maybe a big reason that we found a place for commissioning in the residential world is because, yeah, you're right. A lot of times with residential, even very high-end residential, large, 10, 15, 20,000 square foot homes, a lot of times the design is handed over to a general contractor. And then the general contractor takes control. This is just the way the system works a lot of times on the residential side. They really don't go back to the engineer or the architect unless they absolutely have to. They improvise along the way. They find solutions along the way. There's changes that happen in every construction project, and these large high-end residential projects usually do take several years. These are not projects that get built in 6 months. So yeah, what we were finding was that our engineers especially were losing contact with the project. It also affects on the architectural side because I mentioned the functional components of the building. Functional components to me I talk a lot about the HVAC system, your heating, cooling, ventilation system, or I refer to it as mechanical. So your mechanical systems, your electrical systems, that can include your lighting control systems, your plumbing systems. A lot of people don't think about it. These are all things, and I should mention the last one before I go off into that. Your envelope. Your envelope is so critically important to the performance, the resiliency, the sustainability, think about what is a home supposed to do anyway. It's supposed to keep us comfortable. It's supposed to keep us dry. It's supposed to keep us warm. It's, all of these things. But if that envelope isn't functioning correctly, our systems aren't in alignment. Our HVAC system's not in alignment. Our electrical system may not be, it can affect the performance of all these things. When it's done correctly, we don't even notice that these things are in our house. We take it for granted. We don't even realize that the air conditioning system is running or it's not running. We don't even realize how many thousands of gallons of water our roof has shed off of our home in its lifetime, millions of gallons, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, if your architect is losing touch with that project, if a change is made to the envelope during construction, and it happens all the time, and a lot of times for good reason, our GCs are typically doing what they feel like is the best thing for this project at that time. And so maybe the level of insulation or the type of insulation changed.
Materials get upgraded. They get better over the course of years.
And there's the thing is maybe there's a material that we have available to us now that we didn't have. The exterior wraps that we have, used to was pretty much just Tyvek. Now it's, there's tons of products on the market that can be used. And sometimes the GC chooses a better product than what was originally designed. But when that happens, you can change the performance characteristics of the building. So yes, that's where I'm seeing the things before the drywall goes in, before the insulation goes in. I'm seeing the blower door test. I'm seeing where we may have issues and addressing those before we put the drywall in and hand the keys to the owner and they call us back in 6 months and say, I got water running down my wall. We got a problem here. If I can find that failure point before that happens, that's a big win for it.
Oh, so it's a huge win. It's the difference of I'm moving into my dream house or why am I not moving into my dream house? You spend all this time and money.
This really does.
It's a big difference.
This really does happen. Brand new houses where they got roof leaks. They got water running down the wall. Air conditioning systems are not performing. To me, it's really sad because it's avoidable. This is something that we can prevent, or at least make a better effort in preventing.
So baseline commissioning on the residential side is ensuring what got designed actually got implemented and built. And when those changes need to be made, making sure that whatever ripples come out are accounted for so the house is going to function properly. Is that a fair synopsis?
That's a pretty good summary of it. And in residential commissioning, I'm toying with some different terms. I've used the term commissioning plus. Usually the symbol that we use for commissioning is an uppercase C and then a lowercase x. It's just CX. And so you'll see that term a lot. That's just an abbreviation for commissioning. So I'm thinking about like CX with an R exponent, because it is different. It is different. The process, the basis of it is the fundamental concept of it is the same. But I'm finding in a residential application that it really gets more into more of almost like a project management or an owner's rep type role. where I'm really advocating for the owner to make sure that their expectations and make sure that their requirements are reflected through from the design all the way through construction, all the way to the post-occupancy period. I'm getting their feedback. I'm getting their information. I'm hearing what they have to say. And then I'm going to the engineer and saying, okay, this is how we have to design this system because this is what the expectations are. It's a little more art than just science. When we're doing commercial commissioning, obviously it's different. And the team that we're working with on a commercial, they go through this process multiple times a year. Commissioning on a commercial side, I hate to say it, often becomes more of a box checking and systems testing. We're going through, again, remember the original intent for bringing this in and making it a requirement on commercial side was to ensure that we got good performance out of our systems, that we don't have failures that are causing our system to perform less efficiently than it should. And so, yeah, I think on the residential side, it's much, much more of a art and deciphering and understanding what our critical components are to make sure that our client is very comfortable and also make sure that the systems perform the way they were designed and we don't have problems that are going to continue down the line.
Right. From a family's perspective, what is your process for walking a family through this process? Hopefully you're coming in on the front end, right? Because then you have the ability to be their advocate. But what is your process for taking a family through building that fact-finding sheet? So as the project goes along, you've got that touchstone to come back to say, actually, I know that's a better product, but the family hates whatever it is. Or they said under no circumstances should we ever see a light bulb, and yet this change suggests a light bulb. So how do you take a family through that process and really dig out what I think we can both say? Sometimes they don't know what they don't know. If you ask me, what do you love about my house? I can give you a few things. What do you not like about it? I can give you a few things. How do you tease some of that out? How do you work with a family?
Right. So, yeah, so the process, I think we've already kind of stated it. Hopefully, ideally, we're starting early in the design process. And when I'm saying design, this is when you get your architects and your engineers lined up and they're starting to put lines on paper and really develop, what this project is going to look like. We got the design, or you can say pre-design process, and then we go into construction and then the post-occupancy. So in that early days of the design process, I want to be able to have a conversation with the owner, ideally, and ask them questions like, what does comfort mean to you? Describe to me what comfort means to you. And that sounds like such a weird question. Like,
it's a broad question.
What do you mean? Yeah. And I'm asking broad questions on purpose and leading questions because I want to hear you tell me about what temperature do you like your bedroom to be at night? Tell me about a bad experience. Tell me about a house that you built that you were never comfortable with. And when we talk about comfort is the product of multiple components, multiple things. And we always think of temperature. We're from Texas. That's always, you're either hot. Well, you're always hot.
You're always hot in Texas.
We're always thinking about temperature, but temperature, humidity, light levels, light type. I hate overhead lighting. This is driving me crazy. I really don't like it, but it's necessary right now. Overhead lighting is one of my pet peeves. Intense overhead lighting. What sound, noise. We're finding a lot of our high-end residential clients are really sensitive to any sound that they hear coming from the air conditioning system. They really don't like that, hearing the white noise and then the system turns off and everything gets quiet. And then 10 minutes later, it turns back on and then we got to adjust the volume on the TV. And it doesn't take much. It can be very, very small amounts that can go from, I'm perfectly comfortable here, or now I just got uncomfortable. Now I just got distracted because, something changed. So really want to really thoroughly understand, one, what comfort means to our client. And then number two, I want to understand, how do you want to interact with your system? Because that can really fundamentally impact the design of a system. This is just a kind of a realization that I've had in the last year or two, is that the client telling me, I want to be able to go, I need a thermostat in every bedroom. Okay. That's a big one. I want everybody who stays in my home to be able to control the temperature in their environment. We can do that, but that's a pretty fundamental demand. And that can dramatically shape how the system gets designed and ultimately installed. I want to be able to control my air conditioning system remotely. That's a pretty standard expectation that I think pretty much everybody has. And we have Nest thermostats and
Certainly.
that you can pull up your app. Okay, well, I've had the opposite experience where a client had to use their phone. They didn't have a thermostat on the wall in their bedroom. And so when they got uncomfortable, wanted it either warmer or colder, they had to pull up an app on their phone. And that app on their phone was integrated with multiple systems and other automation systems. And it sometimes works, but it's really, really frustrating at 2 a.m. when one of those systems is doing an upgrade and all of a sudden you can't change the temperature in your
Right.
bedroom without walking all the way down to the basement and finding the little control panel that lets you do
Right.
that. So understanding what would really make you happy. Would you rather have a thermostat on the wall? We can hide the thermostats. They don't, that's one of the big things is that as engineers, we always like the functional stuff. We like to see the ductwork. We like to see how the sausage is made. We like to see, our devices on walls, and we get kind of frustrated when architects take that away from us. But we can compromise. We can find a way to give our clients control in their space and of their space without it being
Right.
ugly. That's not a deal breaker. So anyway, early on in that process, I really, really want to understand what it is that would make you happy with this house. Do you have a lot of artwork? That's one that we run across a lot too in this high-end residential space. You have a lot of artwork that needs to be protected, and,
Absolutely.
and we need to have systems that give you almost a museum level of performance. We need to tightly control temperature and humidity. Are you really concerned about energy consumption? Are you really interested in things like solar panels and green technologies? Are you really interested in passive house technologies? Are you interested? What are your expectations? What are the things that you're going to be really proud of this house when it's done? And you're going to want to tell people about it. All of the things that we implemented into this project. And then I'm going to make sure that that gets implemented in the design, that the design reflects that. And then ultimately it gets built that way too.
So I think one of the questions that we've talked about that comes up periodically is if, let's say, a family is starting to build, we now have a 30-acre estate and there's some structures that are getting renovated and there's a newer primary home that's going to be built from scratch. There's going to be a lot of people involved. And the owners are looking, the family is looking at this structure. You've got your general contractor. A lot of families will have what's called an owner's rep, and I'll let you explain that. And then there's this commissioning agent role amongst someone who's paying the invoices for the contractor, someone who's approving the draws. There's all of these people as part of this process. And I feel like sometimes when a family is coming in, they're looking at this structure and they're saying, what do all these people do? You all have different names, but do you actually do different things? And I think the three of them, the general contractor, the owner's rep, and the commissioning agent, are three that are a little bit, they just need some definition around them so everyone can understand what those specific roles are, because those three roles are very different. So tell us the difference between those three.
Yeah. So I would also add the ecosystem is even more complex. The reason we're doing this is a lot of times you have a family office involved, and that's you're trying to bring this to your family office clients. You have an architect and an engineering team. We call it, the design team or the AE team. And then you have your construction team, you have your general contractor, and they are going to bring in all the different trades that actually make this thing come out of the
Right.
ground. You mentioned the owner's rep, pretty self-explanatory. They are the representative for the owner. And usually they have a background in construction or design. I think most of my owner's reps that I work with have a background in architecture. They've got a lot of experience with projects, usually commercial projects, sometimes a lot of times residential projects. And so again, there's some bleed over from the commercial world coming into the residential spectrum. But anyway, start with the GC. I mean, the GC, like we said, that's the person that makes this thing a reality. That's the person that's probably looking at your project during the design process and helping you establish a budget. You've probably interviewed a couple of different GCs, or maybe you've used this GC for another project, and so you know them well. You've got a level of trust with them. They're to act in your best interest and build your dream. Keep it on budget, on schedule, on time. I mean, ideally, that's what we want. And ultimately turn a product over to you that you're very, very happy with. But they're primarily your tradespeople. They can give really, really valuable feedback during the design process to the design team to say, I see what you're saying. I understand what you want, but in this location, our typical way of construction or typical way that we approach something like this is different. And here's why. An architectural style that you may have in New England may not be appropriate for the Gulf Coast for various reasons. And so you get really, really good feedback from your GC or your SHID.
It's important to get that one right, because they're hanging out, they're there for the duration and pulling in the right
They
people.
are.
So that's an important one.
I kind of switched gears on, I was talking about the owner's rep. So your owner's rep, again, they should have a background in construction, and they should be there to be empowered to make decisions. When a situation comes up, they should be the one that's really assembling all the options, distilling it down to a decision point and some actionable intelligence, and bringing it to the owner. They save the owner time. Ultimately, that's what they do. We use the analogy of, you probably don't do your own taxes. You probably have an accountant that does that. Well, that's kind of what your owner's rep does. They're there to, make decisions on your behalf and help you get through this process, relieve stress, give you some of your time back, and ultimately help you come up with a better end product, which is why we dovetail so nicely. It's why I work with owners reps a lot, because I also have the same goals. I also want to help you make decisions along the way when we need to. I want to help you understand the ramifications of decisions. That's a big one, is that, we like what we like. And sometimes during the construction process, you look at something and say, I didn't think it was going to look like that when it's finished. And that could involve moving walls, that could involve changing up the way systems, locations, and all kinds of things like that. And so from a technical aspect, helping the owner understand, okay, we can change that. Let me help you understand what the ramification of that decision is. We can still do it. I'm not telling you no. I'm just telling you it's a lot more complicated than just making one little change. And if ultimately we do decide to make that change, I facilitate the conversation with the engineers, with the contractors, with everybody to say, okay, we have made a change. Now the dynamics of our system have changed. And so is what we have designed still appropriate, or do we need to go back and maybe redesign something, address this in a different way? So again, we don't have a problem later on down the line.
Right. Your job as that commissioning role, is really to be able to see around the corners. By doing this, what's going to happen down the road, that if we fix it now, no problem. But if we wait until the road curved a few times and now we're to the point, now we're like, what could have been a no cost fix or a simple one now can be really expensive. I think one of the things that frustrates families that we hear a lot about is change orders, and they're inevitable. I don't know. Have you ever worked on a project that didn't have a change order because something like the design, I wanted something a little bit different. It doesn't look the way I thought it was going to.
Right.
I mean,
no, I don't ever had either a commercial or a residential project that did not have change orders. That's just part of the deal. I mean, that's just part of what you're going for various reasons. I mean, one of the things, and a lot of times we can't get that. You wanted this specific thing. It's no longer manufactured.
Right.
It's not available. We just put 100,000% tariff on that country, so that that product now costs a ridiculous amount of money.
We can still get it if you want it, but do you want it?
In the technical world, in the mechanical equipment, if you designed something 2 years ago, there's a good chance that piece of equipment that is on that engineer selected and designed for your project, it may not be available, because we've got manufacturing issues, we've got refrigerant change issues. There's a lot of things that are impacting our HVAC equipment industry. A change order may be generated just out of the nature of the product, not because something necessarily changed.
Right. That's a really good point, actually. I think the other thing, we certainly find this in the family office side, our CPAs, our attorneys, our investment folks, our insurance brokers, and then you have the family in the middle. Not everybody speaks the same language. And I certainly hear you when you're having these conversations too. Your architects, your engineers, your contractors, the family, they don't speak the same language. And I feel like that's also, could be commissioning, could be the owner's rep, but probably both, is a little bit to act as that language translator. You're acting as a translator.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, one of the subtle differences when I'm doing commissioning in a residential application really fall more into that project manager role almost, where I'm facilitating conversations between the people that need to be involved in whatever situation is that we're dealing with. And with my perspective and experience, I have the ability to hear something and translate it, whether it's coming from the owner, I want this. Okay, what you're really saying is you want this. Or the contractor is trying to tell me, hey, we got a problem and we need to figure out a solution. And getting all the people together. A lot of times, contractors can be intimidated. I don't know if intimidated is the right word. It just, there's not a good line of communication between them and the engineers and architects, and hopefully there's a good line of communication between them and the owner. And so they often will improvise a solution rather than really talking through it and getting the right people involved. And like you said, I'm kind of the intermediate. I'm kind of the facilitator and the translator, so that we all wind up, in the right place. And I always tell my contractors and my construction team people, even the engineers and architects, like, I'm not here as an adversary. I'm not here to point out what you're doing wrong. I'm not here to, whenever we see something that's an issue, that we use the term issues, not problems, but issues can become problems. We see something that's an issue, let's work together collectively to fix it. I mean, I want to tell the story of what you're doing right. I want everybody to look great at the end of this project. I want everybody to walk away and feel good about this project and know that it's going to perform well for a very, very long time, and we're going to have a happy client. So I'm here to make everybody look good. That's the way I approach it. Is I want to help you. I am your resource, Mr. Contractor or Mr. Engineer. And me being a design engineer, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it as a design engineer when I have that person in that role on the commissioning side that's keeping an eye on things, that's solving problems along the way, that's coming to me and saying, hey, we got an issue here. You wanted this in your design, but that's not going to work. We need to come up with a different solution.
Well, they don't feel like they have to go back to the family to ask a question. It's not a burden to ask the commissioning agent or the owner's rep. That's their job, versus going back to the family and you're like, hey, I have another question. Hey, I have another question. That's part of that role.
And your family, your owner may or may not have the experience to answer that question.
That's right. That's right.
If they don't have a background, why would we expect that? Why would we expect somebody who's probably only going to experience this process a handful of times in their life, maybe has never experienced it before, doesn't know how the construction process works? Yeah, you need somebody. We need to be having discussions with the right people involved. And maybe it still comes down to a decision point that we bring to our owner, but we've distilled the situation. We've gone through it. We understand what the good direction is and what we think is the best solution. Maybe there's options, but we as a team need to collectively distill that information down and bring it. I always use the term that, I feel like our owner is our CEO. We need to do our work in the background so that we can bring actionable intelligence to our CEO when they need to make a decision, and not burden them with having to go and spend hours and hours and hours researching and learning and trying to understand. No, that's our job. That's our job as the experts, is to provide that recommendation. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we recommend. Do you agree? Can we move forward? That's the way it really should work. And I think that's unique to this residential commissioning thing, a little different than it would be in a commercial setting.
Fair enough. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but one of the things I think that also surprises a lot of families, if they haven't gone through this process before, certainly it is one of the reasons why we have construction oversight services through White River, because you need someone coordinating. And while we coordinate a piece, there are other team members who are coordinating the other pieces. And it really is, you just mentioned the CEO. I think one of the things that surprises them is for a lot of these builds, these construction projects, we're talking, they could be 5 million, they could be 75 or 100 million. And so think about it, like a lot of small businesses don't even have that in revenue. So these really are small enterprises, or large enterprises, as it sometimes is. It takes a group of people all rowing in the same direction and coordinating and communicating up that chain up to the CEO to ultimately get to the best end result for the family, which is a home that they are comfortable in. and want to be in. And it doesn't bother them what the end number was, because this is where they want to be. This is what they love.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, it's construction costs are doing nothing but going up. And, depending on the level of finish that you want, even what I would consider a modest high-end home, that's, let's say 4,000, 4,500 square feet, you can pretty quickly find yourself in a $5 million construction cost. And when we start talking about 5, 10, 20, $100 million construction budgets, yeah, I mean, that just, like you said, it's an enterprise. It justifies having a team of experts who are there trying to achieve the end goal of that enterprise, which is, like you said, something that you're very, very proud of, something that is going to be comfortable for you and your family for a very long time. And it meets all the expectations that you had when you started the process.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about just generally how collaboration works. Lots of very specific and directed meetings over the course of projects, lots of communication. There's usually some centralized systems that you're going through. I get asked about that a lot. Like, how are you tracking timelines? How are you tracking various budgets and vendors and things like that? And so I think one of the things that, if you are a family listening and you are in the process or about to start the process or think you want to do this process down the road, know that there are not only systems that come with this process that the GC is going to have, that the owner's reps are going to have, that the accounting team is going to have. And it is important that those systems, just like the team members, are all collaborative, just like it is in a business, because ultimately at the end of the day, we are helping you run this business. It happens to be a shorter term business. There is an end date, but it is a business nonetheless, and it really should be run as such to help you get the best outcome. At least that has been our experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's why I find that my services dovetail really nicely with the owner's reps, but I think it dovetails very nicely with the family office concept, because, ultimately we're here to give you your time back. We're all dealing with that one limited resource, and, you have families to raise, and you have businesses to run, and you have other priorities. Yeah. And so, ultimately what we're doing is giving you your time back and providing you with a better experience, a less stressful, better product at the end experience. That's what we're here to do. 100%. That's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. We did not talk about this, but I would like to know one of your awesome outcome. Family walked in and just, wow. I want that one.
All right.
So give me that one if you can.
I'm still pretty new to the residential commissioning side. And like I said, these projects take
long time.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen one get completed in under 3 years. I have had the opportunity to work on some really wild projects, and I can't take credit for most of the wow factor, because, it's our incredible interiors people. It's our incredible architects. The things that you touch and feel and see in a home, I think a lot of times have a lot more impact on that wow factor. I think what makes me feel good and what I'm, really passionate about is when everything works so well that you don't talk to the client doesn't call you for 6 months. One of my recent clients that we wrapped up their home, he called me or texted me or something. And we started talking. He said, "I just realized I hadn't talked to you in a couple of months. That's pretty cool." I was like, "That is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that." I mean, yes, you're right. That means everything's good, right? And so they're in love with their home. That there's, they were having some issues, getting. It was more of a schedule push thing than anything. I think that maybe, and they knew going into when they moved into the home, yeah, we probably would be better if we could hold off our move for 6 months, but that just wasn't the case. But from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, functional components of the building, it's performing beautifully, fantastically. They're super happy with it. We didn't intend for this to happen, but the house is so tight. It's nearing massive house standards, which is fantastic. It just speaks to the quality of the trades that were involved in constructing that house. Was just over the top.
That's awesome.
So that's probably my biggest wow project right now. Okay. And again, for me, my win is when I don't hear from that client for a while. And when I do hear from them, they're just so happy. Everything's working great. That to me is exciting.
I think it's awesome when they call and say, hey, can you just keep doing the monitoring stuff and send us cool tips and things like that?
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty
That's where
fun.
we're at. That's where we're at with this one. Is like, everything is working so well. Let's see if we can make it better. So we're actually doing an energy model and we're testing different strategies to see if we can. I mean, this is a 16,000 square foot house. So the electric bill, even though it's a super high performance home, it's still pretty big. And and so, if we can find one little parameter that we can tweak and maybe save thousands of dollars a year on energy
Makes
costs,
difference.
one, because it's just the right thing to do. I mean, that's another thing is like, I say this a lot, we have the ability to build better. We have the ability to, and especially when we're working on these projects that have budgets like we were talking about, the right thing to do is to do it right, to provide a high quality product.
Absolutely.
Don't cut corners. There's no reason to cut corners. We have the budget and we have an owner that's supporting us and building a super high quality product. And then after the fact, let's see if we can make it even better. Let's keep improving. And that's a whole lot better position to be in than we're not meeting the basic requirements. My kid's bedroom is cold at night. Hot water isn't working. Things that dramatically affect how you feel about your home. If we're on the other side of that, we're saying, man, this place is awesome. Now let's see what we can do to make it even better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Flip side of that. What's a call that you've gotten that you're like, wow, they really needed like a full team from the get-go because now this is going to cost a lot of money to fix it?
I had one, the reason I'm involved in their new house and the new construction home that they're building is because of the experience that they had in this previous one. There was not, I don't even think there was an owner's rep involved in this one. I think this was strictly architect, GC, and owner. And this was the situation where they don't have a thermostat in their bedroom and they have to use their phone to be able to control the temperature in their bedroom. They wanted warm floors I'll just say it's in a mountain environment. They wanted warm floors, which we're finding a lot of people really, really like having the radiant floors just because it's just a really nice comfort feature. The warm floors were in the winter heating up the space so much that they were having to turn the air conditioning on to cool the space back down. I mean, these are all things that should have really been considered and addressed even in the design phase to make sure that you're thinking about that. We don't want to be simultaneously heating and cooling a space during the winter. So there was just a lot of elements to that one that, like we talked about, there's a lot of elements to the feeling of comfort, and they didn't get a lot of those correct. And we can even say one of those elements of comfort is control or the feeling of control. I have control over my environment. And they're being woke up at night, when the unit systems turn on and systems turn off, and it's distracting. And it's really disappointing because the home is amazing, beautiful. Oh my gosh. Probably one of the prettiest pieces of property I've ever seen. And they're frustrated and they're upset and they're unhappy at something that it could have been done better. And it was really could have been done better in the process of design and construction. And I think that would have avoided a whole lot of these issues.
All right. With that, we're going to call this a wrap. But I do want to mention you just did a podcast with the Building Science Corporation, I think.
Well, actually, no. Building Science Corporation is a different entity, which I would encourage anybody, if you're interested in building science, I'm glad you plugged them because Dr. Joe Stiebrich is absolutely my idol. I've learned so much from him and Betsy Pettit as well.
Love Betsy.
Wonderful, wonderful people that we have been fortunate to become good friends with. But it's an excellent wealth of information. If you're thinking about doing a high-end residential project or high performance project, I shouldn't even say that. I mean, Passive House, of course, they're big supporters of Passive House. Go to the website. There's tons of information that's free, absolutely free. I mean, it's such a generous thing that they do to provide this information, not only to us in the building science community, but to regular people that just want to learn more. So, but on that tangent, I did a podcast with Christoph Irwin, who hosts the Building Science Podcast. And this podcast has been going for, I don't know, maybe a decade. They've explored any and every topic you can imagine when it comes to building science. Again, a wealth of information is probably going to be a lot more technical discussion than what we just had, because they cater to nerds like me. You love it when we are listening to the Building Science Podcast.
I always learn something.
But my good friends, Christoph Irwin and Miguel Walker, host that podcast. And we just recorded an episode that should be out towards the end of this month, which is June of 2025. So we should expect to see that coming out sometime in July.
Nice. So we will link in our show notes to the Building Science Corporation. We will also link to the Building Science podcast, not related. So if you are looking for direct links to those because you are interested in learning more, you can find those in our show notes. I'll also link to Wes's website and his consulting group for any additional information. Wes, I know you, like me, you're more than happy to have conversations, just throw spaghetti up against a wall and see if it's a good fit, see if there's something that you can do to help. And I would encourage you, if you are building a house, to call him.
Yeah, I mean, I have those conversations almost daily, and I'm still learning different avenues and different things. I mean, just this week, I met with a person who does something very similar to what I do, but on the financial side. And I was like, we need to incorporate that into our project. So yeah, if you've got an idea, if you just want to talk building science and nerd out with me, give me a call, shoot me an email, because I love doing it.
Do it.
It's fun for me. And if you're going to link in my website, it has all my contact information. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me is to contact me through my website or through Christi's office, family office services as well. Either of those avenues will get you to me. And I'll just say my website is engineeredprojects.com or ENGDPROJ.com. And the name of my company is Engineered Projects Consulting.
Awesome. So we also at White River, whenever we have a big construction project and it fits the criteria for needing commissioning, Wes is our go-to. So if you work with us and you're building a house, you might get to work with Wes too. So very good. All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks for hopping on with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, you can find more episodes of the Family Office Success Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or on YouTube. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Rite, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.